Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, it's Kathy Mazak. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and my podcast and all the places that content goes. Today is our first episode of the new year, and I'm really excited to record this episode today because we're going to revisit a piece of content or a theme that I started talking about way back in, I think it was the fall of 2022, the 90% awesome career. Okay, so I've had several clients over the last year remind me about this concept that I started talking about a while back, the 90% awesome career. So I wanted to revisit it a little over a year later. And I think it's kind of a great way to start the new year. So Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. In that 90% awesome episode that I talked about fall of 2022, I really outlined my philosophy kind of for life, but especially around when it comes to your career. I am like a dog with a bone when it comes to making my own career awesome. And I use the word awesome. I know that it sounds like flippant maybe, but I'm not kidding. Like, I don't just mean like make your career good. I mean, make it great. Like, you deserve to have the best career possible. So that's what I want to encourage you and inspire you to create. I do that for myself. So I will not accept less than an amazing career. If I'm going to spend most of my waking hours doing something, or such like a third of my life, like on something, I want it to be great. Like, not just okay, not just like, oh, I tolerate it every day. And I feel very privileged to be able to do that, right? And I think that those of you who are in my audience, right? So people who are professors, you get to do that. And not very many humans in the history of the world, certainly very few, have gotten to create exactly what they wanted out of their career. And very few people today get to do it. So I want to really revisit this idea of the 90% awesome career. I'm going to talk about 5 things that it takes, I guess, to create that 90% awesome career. And I hope that you'll take those 5 things and run with them in 2024. So I think that, always really, since I started my PhD, I have been doing what I call career design, and what is called in the kind of occupational literature, job crafting. So what this is basically where the employee or the person in the job actively changes that role to make it fit better with what they want. Okay, job crafting. I call it career design because over the years of lots of self-coaching and lots of figuring out for myself what I love, I am a designer above all. And I don't mean an interior designer or a graphic designer, although I would love to be. I definitely have that kind of wannabe inside of me for that visual design. What I mean is seeing the big picture of something and then being able to create it. So the example I always use is my favorite moment of the semester is making the syllabus, like designing the trajectory that the students will go through, what they'll read, what kind of exercises will support their learning. Like that is a level that I love to work on best. And so I guess it makes sense that I'm always doing that with my own life and my own career. So there's a few things that need to be in place for you to do this kind of design work. And that's what I really want to talk about today. And I guess I want to say, I'll do a little personal story. Okay. So when I met my husband, we were at Michigan State and I was teaching in the intensive English program, and where basically I was hired as staff to teach with my master's in TESOL, full days of classes for students wanting to make their English better. So I was doing that when I met him. His sister was a student and introduced me to her brother, who was my student. His sister was my student. And she introduced me to her brother. And, our relationship started from there. And I remember specifically, like from that time when I decided, like, okay, how am I going to get to where I want to go? I had met Guillermo. Guillermo had been very clear, like as our relationship was getting more serious, he's like, I'm going to move back to Puerto Rico. I'm not interested in pursuing a job in the States. I want to work at my alma mater, which is University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. And so if we're going to stay together, that's what my future looks like. You can kind of figure out what your future looks like. So I went to Puerto Rico with him over a Thanksgiving break, I think, and loved Puerto Rico. And then so I started looking at like, well, what would it take for me to have a job at University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez? If that's where he was going and he was a doctoral student, then, that's where I would go too. But I had this master's degree and I was like, yeah, and lots of, there's a lot of opportunities to teach English. So let's see. And I realized quickly that you couldn't get a tenure-track job teaching English at the university without a doctoral degree. So they didn't have anything like the intensive English program where I was teaching at Michigan State. It was really something where you would take a faculty position and you would also teach English. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. Of course, I changed once I got my PhD. But from that moment, I have been designing my career. So I was at Michigan State. Guillermo was at Michigan State. I was like, well, I live here. I've been working here I think I was working for 2 or 3 years at Michigan State at that time. I was a resident. I'm like, well, it makes the most sense to do a doctoral program here. What are the doctoral programs? And I look around to all of the different ones that could apply to me. And I chose the one where I had the most liberty to design. So I did a program that no longer exists. It's called Critical Studies in the Teaching of English. It was inside the English program. It meant that I could combine linguistics and education and all of that without having to do a PhD in the School of Education, which had so many more requirements, many of which were classes I just didn't want to take. So I was pursuing 90% awesome. I didn't want to take quantitative research. So I looked at that curriculum in the School of Ed and I was like, nope, it's not 90% awesome. If I do this other PhD where the requirements were take 24 credits, you get to choose what they are. And I was able to combine classes from rhetoric and composition and education and English ed and English linguistics, applied linguistics, and make them into the 90% awesome doctoral program, which I did. Like, I really had an awesome doctoral program. Like, I'm not kidding. My advisors were amazing. My timeline was great. I got a Spencer dissertation fellowship. It was awesome. So all of this is to say that even then I was designing. And then when I was in my, I chose the doctoral program that way. And then I very carefully designed each and I want to say manipulated, right? I did. I manipulated the curriculum to be exactly what I needed it to be to get the tenure track job at University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. Every single paper I wrote with an eye towards that. I did my dissertation, collected my data there, wrote my dissertation about Puerto Rico. And so, of course, I got the tenure track job. I had spent years, chess pieces, figuring out how I was going to get that job. And I got it. So after I got it, for the first year, 2 years, it was not awesome. It was pretty terrible, actually, as the first 1 or 2 years often are. It was baptism by fire. It was trying to make time to write publications off my dissertation. I loved my dissertation. I had loved actually writing my dissertation, and I just couldn't seem to find time. We had a baby. I was pregnant the first year, and then I can't remember exactly, but in those first 2 years, I got pregnant and had my first baby. So I wasn't sleeping. I was teaching 4-4. Like it was many things. So at that time, it took a while, but once I got my footing, I was like, no, this needs to be what I need it to be, not what it is. And so I started designing my tenure track career. And I said like, all right, I don't want to teach 4-4. So I'm going to make sure, and I want to do research. So I'm going to do research that buys me out so that I don't have 4-4. And then I got to the point where I was like, well, if I have grad students, then because we would get 1 credit, we were supposed to teach 12 credits. That's 4 3-credit classes. If I had 3 grad students in our master's program, that would add up to the equivalent of 1 class. And then I would be trying to always buy myself out of research time by writing grants. And so I really was on a 2-2 for most of my time because I was able to get grants and because I had a pipeline of students all the time. So those are just examples of me like figuring out like how can I make this job what I want it to be because it isn't what I want it to be. And over the years, I really created the job to be what I wanted. You know, when I started the blog and what is now this podcast and all these things on the side, you know, it had become less awesome, but I also had done it for 13 years. So it was, you know, I had kind of like a whole career as a professor and become a mom of 3 by that point. And things had shifted. So I was just still kind of pursuing 90% awesome. And I realized that in the container I was in, I was not going to be able to continue to pursue that. And that's when I created my own container, which has become this, you know, professional development company called Scholar's Voice, and this podcast and the programs that I offer now. So this is all to say that I relentlessly pursue this because it is top priority for me to be spending most of my time in my life doing things that I love and spending my time in ways that I love. So in this revisiting, I'm still getting to the 5 things that I'm going to talk about that like the 5 things that are the work of pursuing the 90% awesome career. But I was listening to like a sales coach named Stacey Bayman, and she's a product of Brooke Castillo's life coach school. So she uses a lot of the same life coaching school lingo and stuff that Brooke Castillo uses. And one of the things that the life coach school people say is, you know, life is 50% good and 50% bad. And those are that's objectively true. Life is 50% good and 50% bad. And that's one of the things that they kind of coach around. And I think that that's probably true, that life is 50% good and 50% bad. But I don't think that has to be true of your career. I don't think that your career is 50% good, has to be. You have to tolerate 50% good and 50% bad. And actually, I think that most people or many people, especially women who I know in academia, are actually tolerating 80% bad and 20% awesome. So 80% of their time is spent in meetings they don't want to be in, doing paperwork they don't want to do, with cranky colleagues, tedious, responding to emails, fighting bureaucracy. That's 80% of your time. And then there's like 20% of the time when you're like pursuing your research idea, or you're in the classroom and you have one of those sparky classroom, classes where the students are really engaged, or you create something you're really excited about, or you give a lecture that you give an invited talk or a lecture or something and it's really good and well received. You go to conferences and you're intellectually stimulated. You read something that gets you excited. That's 20%. So I think that's a big problem because I think that like tolerating 80% bad and 20% awesome is like a recipe for burnout. And the problem is actually the 20% awesome because we are just like so, it's so sad. We're satisfied with crumbs, or like, we're just like, we will take the crumbs. And the crumbs are those little sprinkled in magic moments that make you say, this is why I pursued academia. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And because they're so good, like you just, like the 80% BS, you just keep tolerating. And I think that's fine. It's not good enough for me. And so if it's not good enough for you, now I'm at the part of the podcast where I am going to present what is the work of the pursuit of the 90% awesome career. Okay. And I'm going to talk about 5 things. Okay. None of these are like, I'm going to check them off my list today and then we'll have them tomorrow. That's not what, as I'm going to explain, that is not what the 90% awesome career will do for you. So, number 1, this is what is the work, okay, emphasis on work, of the pursuit of the 90% awesome career. Number 1, it takes work. It takes work. And the only person who will do the work of making your career 90% awesome is you. There is no one else whose priority this is, who this is even on their agenda, including your partner, including your children, including your parents, including your colleagues, your department chair, your dean. Nobody cares. Okay, like they might care, like your partner might care. But nobody, this is not the work of anyone but you. The only person who is motivated enough to do this work is you. The only person who has the tools to do this work or who can control this work is you. None of the other people in your life are going to be like, hey, I want Kathy to have a 90% awesome career. What can I do? Like, your department chair is not thinking about that. She's thinking about so many other things that are also important. Like, no shade towards the department chair. Like, that's not the job. The job is to run the department, not to make sure that each professor is living out their best career. One would hope it's a byproduct of running the department, but it's very rarely so. It's just too hard. So, number 1, the work of the pursuit of the 90% awesome career is to understand that A, it's work, and the only person who will do that work is you. It is your work to do. All right, number 2. The work of the pursuit of the 90% awesome career. You need to work for clarity. All right. And clarity means that you have crystallized very accurately or very crystal clear, crisply, what it is you want from your career. So that the work of getting clarity takes reflection. It takes time spent on getting clarity and space held for this work. So clarity is not something that, like, sometimes we get like what some people call like divine downloads, right? Where like you get this like, wah, idea and you're like, yes, that's it. That's what I'm going for. But rarely. To get clarity takes work. It takes reflection. It takes time and space held for the work of getting clarity. It's not easy. It's not. So clarity is the next part. Number 3. I was going to originally call number 3 boundaries. I think it's an overused word, though I think it's still useful. And then I changed number 3 to be self-preservation, which includes boundaries. So in order to pursue the 90% awesome career, you have to believe that you are the most important asset. The most important thing about your career is not your job. It's you, right? It's not your position at the university. like the role that you have. Like, I'm an associate professor. That is not the most important thing. The most important asset is you. The fact that you are in a particular role is not as important as your physical health, mental health, energy, and boundaries around your time. The preservation, that's why I said self-preservation. The most important thing, the most important asset in your 90% awesome career is you. Doesn't matter what kind of university you're at. Doesn't matter the name of your university. What matters more, what matters the most, is the preservation and careful care of your brain, your energy, your body, and your time. Now, boundaries are one way that we can do that, but self-preservation is the thing. That is the thing that is number 3 in the list of work of the pursuit of the 9% awesome career. You're going to need to work on self-preservation, which means self-care, boundaries, time management, and all of those things. All right, number 4. Number 4 is dedication. And what I mean by this is like just not accepting less. Like, just stop tolerating 80% bad and 20% awesome. Stop being satisfied with crumbs and be dedicated to the idea that your career can be 90% awesome and that that is what you are choosing. You are dedicated to the work, not accepting less. Like a dog with a bone, you will not let go of that idea. It takes dedication, because I think I was going to say it's easy to, but it's actually not easy to live out an 80% bad, 20% awesome career. It is not easy. In fact, it leads to burnout. So dedication is number 4. And number 5 is patience. A 90% awesome career takes time. Like, it takes years. When I started my tenure-track career, I don't even want to say like, oh, it took me 3 years to make it 90% awesome, but it took me at least that to get anywhere close. It took me 2 years to figure out what 90% awesome would look like and believe that I could do it. And then I could, so for the clarity, it took that long. And then the actual work of creating, like doing the self-preservation that it takes to get there, more years. Okay. So that's why dedication is so important, because you also need patience, and you need to know that you're like, for example, if you're trying to manipulate your teaching schedule to make time for writing, you need the clarity of when is your best writing time. And then you need the self-preservation instinct, like really worked up, so that you can start the work of changing your teaching schedule. Because, and I'm not trying to make like, I know it sounds like a big deal. It's a big deal because it is a big deal. Like, you are not, like, for many places, like the time that things are taught is kind of in stone, and who teaches what is also in stone, but nothing is actually in stone. So chipping away at that and pursuing those changes that you know are going to make your career 90% awesome takes patience. It might take years. It might not happen next semester. It might not happen the semester after that. It might take a year. It might take 2 years. Keep going. Like, it's that dedication and patience. So to recap, what is the work of the pursuit of the 90% awesome career? 5 things. The acknowledgement that it is indeed work. It takes work, and that the only person who will do this work is you. Clarity. You need clarity. And to get clarity, you need to reflect. You need to spend time and energy on getting that clarity. Create spaces for yourself to get the clarity. Number 3, self-preservation, including the preservation of your mind, body, energy, time through boundaries. Number 4, dedication, like dogged pursuit of the 90% awesome career. And finally, patience and the acknowledgement that this takes time. This might be achieved in what my coach, Kayleen Asher, used to say, incremental upgrades, small tweaks that add up. Like, how can I make this a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better to add up to the 90% awesome over time? So that's my Revisiting 90%, the 90% Awesome Career podcast. Happy New Year. If you are looking for a place to start, because I was talking all up here, like talking about clarity and talking about self-preservation and all these things, these are big ideas. If you're looking for an entry point, the entry point into the 90% Awesome Career is Navigate. And that is our 12-week writing and publishing program. Now, am I saying this because I want to sell you Navigate? No, I am saying this because when I was pursuing 90% Awesome, I created Navigate. When I was a little bit along, when people started asking me, like, how are you doing that? How are you publishing? How are you doing these things? Like, it was because, and that I was able to then say, what did I do that? Start to document those processes and create a curriculum that has been in development and has been getting better and better over the last 7 years. It is now where I really want it to be, the curriculum of Navigate and the container, the 12-week container that we're offering it in. If you would like to be part of Navigate in the new year, we are accepting applications right now. So our regular enrollment period is now open. Our cohort starts on January 29th with calls scheduled on Fridays. So Monday, the content releases. Friday is our coaching call. Alternates with a co-writing call for 12 weeks. By the end of the program, you will have submitted what we call your low-hanging fruit article, that almost done article that's been hanging out on your to-do list for so long. Now, I just talked about all these big ideas, the 90% Awesome Career. So what does a writing and publishing program have to do with that? Navigate is a career program disguised as a writing and publication program. We use writing and publication as the entry point into career design and career makeover, actually. That clarity that I talked about, we get through creating our academic mission statement. The self-preservation comes from our activities alignment. The design work that we do in getting your publication pipeline mapped, in figuring out how long it takes for you to do things and creating project plans for your writing, for the design work it takes in creating the soaring system of writing tools that work together to make sure that you have a good relationship with your writing. All of that happens in our Navigate program, and these are all first steps in the 90% Awesome Career. So if you are interested in that, I invite you to apply. You can go to scholarsvoice.org/navigate. You will see the pink button at the top where you can apply. If the pink button says get on the wait list, that's because applications are closed when you got there. But if you're listening in real time, applications are open now and you can submit your application. Don't wait. Do it now because our application process involves a call with me and our call times fill up fast. So go ahead to scholarsvoice.org/navigate, find the pink button and apply. And I will be happy to start you off on the pursuit of your 90% Awesome Career. Happy New Year. Bye.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.